I met a young man who has agreed to share his experience regarding suicide. His story consists of sadness, joy, and hope. His name is Colton Ogden.
My name is Colton Ogden. I was born and raised in a small town in southern Utah. Work has kind of taken us all over the place. So we've lived in places like Texas, California, Nevada, did a brief stint in Arizona, and now we're back in southern Utah. Coronavirus kind of pushed us a little bit closer to family. So my background, I am 28 years old. I have 3 kids, 2 boys, 6 and 4. And then we just had a little girl about 5 months ago. And so I've been married about 8 years. It's pretty much the state that I'm in right now. As far as why I'm here, is to kind of share my story about, how I did get to the point that I'm at. I'm very, very happy with where I am now. I haven't always been this way. I've been in some pretty dark places before. In high school, my entire plan growing up, I grew up riding and racing motocross, and it was kind of my whole plan to go professional. So when that didn't happen, what ended up happening actually was I had a contract signed to go pro. Things were looking up, and then the world kind of fell out from under me when I had an accident that put me in the hospital for a while, did some pretty significant damage to myself. And what ended up happening was a lot of the sponsors just moved on to the next up and comer. I know initially my plan was, I wasn't really focusing on school. My plan was to drop out of school when I turned 16 and race the professional circuit. And by the time I turned 16, I was not in that position. So it shifted who I was as far as an identity. Before the accident I definitely struggled with like depression and anxiety, and it manifested itself in a lot of different ways, but mainly just anger. I was a really pissed off teenager, and my upbringing as far as a kid, I didn't know my dad growing up, or my birth dad. And so I ended up kind of internalizing a lot of that and thinking that, hey, this is all on me. And it manifested itself in some not very healthy ways. Then it kind of got to a breaking point after the accident happened. I remember thinking like, man, I don't know how I can go on. At this point I ended up missing a lot of school because of the accident, looking at having to repeat a year of high school just to be able to graduate. And so there was a lot of things that was very, very easy to play the victim in, as far as, a lot of things that I felt like were out of my control were happening to me, is kind of the way that I thought. And so what ended up happening was it came to a breaking point when this was kind of my routine. My routine would be to drink myself to sleep. Most of the time, I had friends that we were able to get liquor pretty easily during this time. And so, but nobody really knew. Like, it wasn't like I drank with friends or anything like that. It was just a lot of times I couldn't sleep if I didn't. And then I remember there was one night that I had a 12 gauge shotgun that, I had entertained the thought of taking my life probably several times up to this point. And I had a 12 gauge shotgun that was loaded. And I remember there was one night that I'd been drinking, and something had kind of set me off to the point where I didn't think that things were ever going to get better. I'd kind of given up on the hope of things getting better. And so I had committed to doing it. I remember I put the barrel of the shotgun in my mouth, and I remember the feeling of putting all of my weight. I had my thumb on the trigger, and I remember putting all of my weight. So the butt of the gun was on the ground, but I was sitting on the side of my bed, and I just put all the weight behind the thumb, on the trigger, and by some miracle it was on safety. And I specifically recall taking it off of safety. So I don't know who or what was watching out for me that day, but there was definitely some greater things happening. And I remember the moment after I'd committed, I thought to myself, this isn't what I want. Like, it was like almost like a split second where between when the gun would have gone off and when I committed, there was this almost like this regret, if that makes sense. And it happened in a moment. Like, it was something that I don't think I fully consciously understood until later, thinking back on it. But what ended up happening was I laid back on my bed, I dropped the gun, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I don't remember falling asleep, but what ended up happening was I found myself in somewhat of a dream-like state. And in this dream, I had committed suicide, and I ended up on the other side of the veil, or whatever you want to call it is. And I remember waking up on the flat of my back, and I don't remember a ton of the specifics, but I feel like my soul does, which is kind of interesting. It's a very interesting experience to recall back. But I remember waking up on my back, and it was like everything was just kind of black. Like, the floor was black, everything was just kind of black, but there was like, I could still see, which is kind of weird to say. And I remember this man approached me, and I sat up, and this man approached me, and he helped me up, and he said, "You gave up too soon. I had so many things in store for you, and so now you have to watch and see everything that would have been." And like I said, this is kind of where the soul remembers the specifics. My conscious mind doesn't, but I remember the feelings of seeing this. It was like this surround sound TV, but the entire thing, I was immersed in the memory almost of things that would have been. And it was everything from, I remember the feeling of holding my first child for the time, like in this like dream, right? I remember the feeling of feeling true love, of having authentic connection. And I remember there were times that I saw myself having conversations with people. And like I said, I don't remember the specifics, but I remember thinking to myself, holy cow, that person, I want to be that person. Seeing myself like in the future was super, super powerful to me. And there was a lot of other things that happened in this dream that, like I said, I don't remember. But it felt like my entire life was kind of on a fast forward, and I had to watch it, but I caught everything. I caught all the feelings, all of the hopes, the losses, the fun, the sad, the great times, the bad times. But what I found was that everything outweighed, all the good outweighed any of the negative. And the moment that my soul knew if I would just hold on through tough times, better things were going to come. And I would appreciate the better things when they did come even more because of the hard things that I had been through. And it was very, very interesting to me. And I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I didn't wake up and everything was changed automatically. Like, it wasn't like this story of like, I walked out of my bedroom that next day a completely new person. Like, I had a new perspective, which I think in some ways makes me a new person. But old habits died hard, right? And I had built some habits that weren't sustainable in the long run, but they were hard to kick. But it was that hope. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was that it had given me something that up until then I didn't really realize I had. I had hope that I was going to become something greater than what I was in that moment, because I didn't want to be who I was in that moment. And that was why I wanted to commit suicide, right? And so thinking about, okay, I can become somebody that I do want to be, that was really what I held on to for a really, really long time. And I mean, I've had ups and downs since. I'm not going to lie. Life hasn't been all rainbows and butterflies since then. But since then, I have been able to have a pretty good impact on a lot of people that I have in my circle, and I have a beautiful wife. Things haven't always been the easiest for us, but overall, our marriage has been great. And right now, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. We have a beautiful family, and I love my kids. And I am happier now than I've ever been. And I still have hope that it's only going to get better. Looking back, I think that's the biggest message for anybody that might watch this is that, I've been there. Like, I've been to the point where I don't want to be the person that I am anymore. Like I was there, and I didn't want to be that person anymore, to the point that it felt like the easiest way to change that person was to just not have that person be in existence anymore. And so, but to take that and realize that we really have more control than a lot of the world would have us realize, that, it's empowering to know that we can captain our ship. And I'm living proof that you can build an amazing life. I have an amazing family. We live in a pretty nice home. I have a thriving business, and I'm around people that I love. And I can't ask for anything more. And things are only getting better. And so, that's my 2 cents on making sure that people do hold on, because it can get better. And when it does get better, that better is like appreciated a lot more. So it's like the better is better than it would be if you hadn't have gone through the hard things and been through the dark places.
So how old were you when you say high school? How old were you when you tried to commit suicide?
I was 15.
You're 15. And did your family know? Like at one point, did you tell your family that you did this, and what was their reaction, or they didn't know?
Anything that I was going through at this point. I had kind of become, in my mind, a lone wolf. And motocross growing up, that was kind of my outlet. And I know that my mom saw that was my outlet for a lot of things. So she did everything she could to support it. And it was a very expensive sport. It's not something that was very cheap. I mean, we weren't showing up to the races in the biggest rig or with the best bikes. But even then, looking back, I know that my mom did a lot, and my dad as well. They did a lot to make sure that we could get to the races. And there were other things that were sacrificed as a result, such as, that family time outside of the racetrack and things like that. And so I didn't really have anybody that I could turn to at that point. And I think that was kind of the point for me when I realized, okay, things have got to change, right? And there is something that is watching out for me. And that was really kind of the first time that I had started to develop a relationship with any sort of a creator or God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, right? And just recognizing the fact that the world didn't revolve around me anymore. And I think that that's empowering a little bit as well, because if you think that the world revolves around you and you think that you suck, then the entire world sucks. At least that's kind of how it was for me. And from there, it shifted after this experience to something that I think that was the relationship that I relied on during this time was, okay, you're out there, what do you want with me, and how do I be better, And so, yeah.
Now, does your family, do they know now what happened?
Yeah. I've been, I think part of the experience that I had was that, whoever gave it to me or however it came about, I think it was meant to be shared, because I know I'm not the only one that's been where I was, right? And my heart goes out for you because, from the sounds of it, you didn't know either, right? And there's no way that you would have. And I think that that's most parents, most people that I've talked to that have lost somebody to suicide. kind of the same song, different dance of yeah, like we had no clue that they were going through the things that they were going through, right? And I was the same. I mean, on a face value, I was a jokester. I was kind of out there, maybe a little bit wild, you know, but it was in those like dark hours of the night that really I didn't love who I was, and so it was really, really hard to continue. And I know that that's, you know, that's the case for a lot of people, and so that's why, like, maybe for me it is a little bit easier to share. I mean, it's not fun to look back on or anything like that, but if this helps, if me sharing my story helps one person under, you know, sharing it, it doesn't matter how hard it is to share it, then it's worth it, you know.
Do you still struggle with depression and anxiety? And if so, like, what tools would you use, or can you give somebody any sort of, you know, suggestions as to what they can do differently?
Yeah. So this is kind of what I've devoted my entire day-to-day, like, routine and everything. Like, everything that I do kind of revolves around me not heading back to there, because yeah, it is very easy to fall into that trap, or at least a lot of people say that it is. My argument would be that this is the way that I look at it, and I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, but I know that it works for me. I view like happiness and sadness and depression and anxiety and joy like on this pendulum, where we are only capable of feeling as much joy as we are willing to experience sadness, if that makes sense, or capable of feeling sadness. Because I've met people that their emotions are very much like in the middle of the pendulum. They don't really feel anything on each side, right? And so what I found is that I am capable of feeling levels of joy that like I didn't know that I had, but also like I've met a lot of people that are not able to feel the level of joy that I have. And I think that comes directly from the fact that I've been through such, like, on the other side of the pendulum, right? Like the pendulum swung as big as and as far as it can in both ways. And what I've really realized is that just something as simple as like shifting the way that I'm standing, or shifting the way that I'm breathing, or if I'm sitting down, just standing up. And then it's like there's these little mental resets, right? And just realizing that like I am in control of my thoughts. Like my thoughts are not me, neither are my emotions. Like they come and go constantly. And so like to realize that, like, I mean, like, for example, if somebody walks into a room that you're in and turns off the lights and everything's dark, every thought that you have right then is like, what happened to the lights, or who turned the lights off, or, you know what I'm saying? And that's not a thought that you conjured up on your own. It was given to you by external circumstances. And especially in today's world with crazy media and politics and coronavirus and this and that and the other, it's very, very easy to see and recognize that. And I think that, I mean, recognize it on the level that, holy cow, like thoughts and emotions are going to come and go, right? If I see something that emotionally charges me on Facebook about something political, regardless of my political standpoint, if it affects me emotionally, I can then identify that, hey, this emotion is not going to last, because it never has. Every amount of happiness, like every time I've been happy, it's never lasted for the rest of my life. Every time I've been sad, it's never lasted for the rest of my life, right? And so just realizing that, like, I am not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts, and like not even my words, because those change as well, right? And even our actions, our thoughts, words, and actions, we can change those, and as a result, we change ourselves. And so my whole strategy is like, hey, life, what I've found is that life will either happen by design or by default. So if we don't design our lives, we end up on default, which in today's day and age, it's dang near impossible to not have darkness be the default. And so, at least for me, like if I don't design light and design activities that are going to lift me and give me energy and design positive things into my life, if I'm not actively captaining this, then yeah, it's very easy to slip into that default, that darkness, right? And so I mean, we could go on for hours about this and little tips and tricks and things like that. My encouragement would be, if anybody has questions about little things or tips and tricks that I do about this, or wants to learn more, like just reach out to me. And I'm an open book. I mean, I'm, like I said, I'm not claiming to be something that I'm not. I'm not an expert in this field, but I am an expert on making myself happy. And I think that a lot of the rules apply to other people. And so, yeah.
I think that's really powerful, that message that you just sent. And the fact that you would be willing to have people reach out to you, I think is amazing. So I think that's a really good idea. So could I put your email in the description of the video?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah.
Your email in there, and then we'll get this story out. And I think that was a really, really good story that you shared, Colton. And I am so grateful that you were willing to come on. And so I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time.
Yeah. Likewise. Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah. Take care, Colton. We'll be in touch.
Hey, you too. We'll see you.
Yeah. Bye.
Letting go of the hope that the best is yet to come. We've got my neck in this noose, and I might as well jump. Becoming too familiar with the trigger of this gun. Maybe I'll pull in with some luck, I'll feel loved. And with a blast I see my past, and I wake up to a man with outstretched hands. There's holes in his hands. He said, son, you gave up too soon. I had so many things in store for you. Now watch, I'll show what would happen. I never knew that I'd find love, but it was coming for me. In a matter of weeks I found her. She swept me off of my feet. We honeymooned for a week on the beach in Mexico, with the sand on our feet. And the years flew by, they were the best of my life. And she looked at me and said, 9 months time. And then I watched myself shed tears of joy when I finally got to meet my baby boy. And then I turned to the man and said, I can't watch anymore. And he said, I'm sorry, but there is so much more. You see, this is just a bit of all of the things you're gonna miss. And you stole so much more than your own happiness. And I cried the last time I thought about suicide. It was 2 weeks after I already had. And here I am on the other side, wishing for something I can't have. And the last time I thought about suicide was 2 weeks after I already had. And here am on the other side, wishing for something I can't have. I wanna go back.